Hi friends, this is Dina and welcome to my new video. In today's video, I'm going to be starting a new Pantone challenge and I'm going to be showing you my first 3 paintings that I'm doing. And yeah, I'm excited to show them to you and I really hope you enjoyed this kind of chill, more relaxed video. I just mostly want to chat to you and just kind of give you my thoughts, I guess. If you don't know what a Pantone challenge is, it is basically a fun art challenge that was started by Big Blue Tang on Instagram, or Dory. She just basically made this challenge of painting into these Pantone postcards that have the colorful base on them. They're not originally meant for painting, so I personally have to do a little bit of prepping before I start painting on them. But yeah, I saw her videos on the internet and I thought that looked really fun, so I started the challenge myself 2 years ago at this point. I then last year finished my 100 postcard set completely, and I also showed all the paintings here on YouTube in another video and I will have that linked below. But yeah, Dory started this challenge. I will have her socials down below so you can check her out. So yeah, you basically just paint on top of these colorful postcards using that color as your inspiration, and I firstly just chose this purple color as my first Pantone postcard. Definitely not my usual color scheme or like my usual favorite color or anything, but I just wanted to go for that because I thought that it would be an easy color to include in a painting for me. So what I do with my Pantone postcards, each and every time when I start painting on them, I never can just start painting on them, you know, like this. They don't have a surface that really works for gouache. I don't know about some other mediums. I've also heard that some people don't prep them and they just paint on top of them, but at least for me, using gouache, that does not work because it doesn't like to really stick onto the surface, and then later on it might start like crumbling off the surface entirely. So I use gesso and that works perfectly and it's super easy to use. And yeah, it's clear gesso, by the way, not white, because of course with white it will, you know, change the color of the postcards itself. So I always use clear, so the color on the base looks really good afterwards as well. Whenever I'm adding the gesso, I'm also taping the lower portion of the whole postcard so the white area doesn't have the gesso in it. But yeah, it just adds some grit to the surface and it makes the paint just, you know, stick to it better. It just works so well and I've never really had any issues with painting on top of it after I've done this. But I do have to say that also painting on top of these postcards doesn't work in the same exact way as when you just paint on a white paper. Firstly, the texture is still a little bit different, but also the fact that it's colored makes everything 10 times harder. I always have a hard time, especially with gradients, because you're not blending colors into colors, you're blending colors into a colorful paper, which is so much harder because when you add color on top of a colorful paper and you haven't first of all mixed the original color yourself, so you don't exactly know what kind of shade it is, especially because, you know, when you're then mixing that color on your palette and trying to get a accurate color mix and color match, it doesn't look great most of the time. So I don't know what I'm saying and if that makes any kind of sense, but you know, color theory is hard when you're painting on these postcards. Here I was trying to make a lighter shade of that original color and just kind of make a gradient from light to dark on the sky, but the color that I mixed originally ended up looking darker than the actual original color when I tried, and everything just worked really weirdly. And I tried to kind of like with water blend that color more into the postcard itself, but no, it did not work. And I've had that issue so many times before, but I just had to try it because I was like, yeah, this time it's gonna work. No, it's not. Then I just painted the moon and I started painting those green or almost black greenery on top. And yeah, I just tried to go for something that would be a little bit more simple, definitely not my usual style, but something that I know that many people are painting now. Like, you know, I have sometimes very hard time figuring out what I actually want to paint, especially when I've had longer periods of not painting. I know that it might not look like it on the internet, especially because like on Instagram, I'm posting pretty much 5 times a week, like painting content 5 times a week, but I'm not actively painting right now. After I finished my sketchbook in March, I've been pretty much on a painting break after that I've painted in my bullet journal, sure, but you know, like I haven't been painting much, and it's weird. And it's also like weird to have a distance from that, because it also means that when I take my paints again, it doesn't come naturally to me. I mean, yes, it does in a way, but like not as naturally as before. I noticed that I struggle a lot in areas where I did not struggle before. You know, I'm even like questioning, am I good at painting anymore? And of course I know I am. It's not a skill that just disappears overnight, but it's hard to get back into the groove and the normal routine of it when you have had such a long break. And like, I've been happy about my break, but there has also been moments where I felt like something is actually missing. Like, a part of me is not here. And yeah, I definitely want to get back into painting as well, but also it's harder for me to go back into things when I've just had such a long break. Like, you know, it's hard to not paint, but it's also hard to get back into painting, because for example, painting all of these 3 paintings that I did here, and you will see them later, even though I had fun painting, now when I look back at the paintings that I made, I'm even more like confused about the fact that I painted them. I'm like, did I just paint these? Because I don't know, it just feels different. You know, I have to find my own style, I guess, and my own fun in painting, I guess. But yeah, it was a fun practice, and I'm happy that I ended up painting something anyway, because of course that's always really valuable, whether you make masterpieces or not. But yeah, I pretty much talked through that whole process of the first painting. I think it turned out pretty good, and yeah, it's a simple painting, nothing too exciting, but I guess that's exactly what I needed for this first painting right here. The next day was much harder in terms of coming up with painting references and painting, I don't know, subjects. I was really struggling with what I wanted to do, and that's also about this challenge. Like, it's fun that you get to actually have inspiration from this one color, and it's very nice that you don't have to come up with that idea completely yourself, because you already have some sort of guide because you have that color. But then it also is kind of limiting, because of course you now have to include that color into the finished piece, and it's like, what should I do? But it's fun and kind of frustrating at the same time, I guess. Here I did the gessoing part off camera, and I'm sketching on top of that. Sometimes I sketch on top of the gesso layer, and sometimes I do it prior to that, like I do in my third painting that you will see a little bit later. I don't know where that comes from, like why I chose to here paint afterwards, but I guess that when you have those, like for example in this painting that I used, you maybe saw that reference photo there for a minute. I will also have that linked below, but I'm painting this like doorway, like maybe a garden doorway that has, you know, you can see like the garden and this greenery behind it, but there's this door. It has more of these like intricate details, so I just wanted to have those be there when I start painting, because if you do the sketch before the gessoing, it will take some of that away. So maybe I just wanted that to remain on the surface better, but I just ended up sketching afterwards. I think it was a good choice. I lost some footage here because my camera had stopped filming. I'm very sorry. I actually loved this part of the painting so much, like working on those tiny details in the back. I definitely got my love for painting back for these tiny moments of me making that that little scene behind the door, and it was so satisfying to make. But I was talking about the color before, and especially the fact that the colorful like background kind of helps you but also makes it harder. But yeah, I've definitely had also a hard time with like including the base color into the finished painting a lot. Like I feel like every time that I post these videos online of me painting these, especially every video that goes kind of like viral, I guess, get these comments of people like almost getting mad at the fact that you cannot see the base color in the finished piece as well as they would like. But it's sometimes extremely hard to include that base color into the finished painting. I know that it might not be as clear when you just see me painting on these postcards or seeing the finished product, but it is actually so hard to sometimes, have that base color in the finished product, especially whenever I've painted like nature, or I've painted some like fruits or some food. Especially, I feel like those are super hard sometimes. I know that it might look like it would be easier to just like leave a blank area where you just don't paint anything on top and have that as the base color showing through, but it's extremely hard because of course when you're painting you have to make sure that those areas also match with the rest of the painting, and if you just leave those parts uncolored, they will have a very different texture to the parts that you have painted on, because they will have a lot more shine, which like I don't mind all the time, but sometimes it just makes a whole painting look super unrealistic and weird, like there is something out of place. And I feel like when people, like if they would try to paint on these, they would understand what I'm like, where I'm coming from. But I feel like people just always see something on the internet and they think that it's much easier than it actually is. And I'm not trying to like complain or anything, but just putting that out there in case some of you would like to see more of the base color. It's not always easy to include it into the finished piece, but I always try to. I always have that as my like main goal. I never really want to. I mean, last time that I was finishing the other set, I definitely was like reaching with some of my original color. I was like, okay, I'm trying to like include as little of that as I possibly can. But with these first ones, especially when I have a lot of colors to choose from, I always try to include that into the finished piece. That is the main thing that I start with, like, trying to find out some reference photos that have that kind of color in them and trying to include it into the finished painting. But yeah, I think here I also included it pretty well. You won't probably see it right now yet, but I started making that kind of like brick pattern on top of that gray area of the postcard. And honestly, I don't think that turned out really nice. I didn't really like the color and it looked kind of muddy. But anyway, you can still see that color peeking through. And I always also try to think that you don't have to see that color completely, but it would be very different if my original color of the postcards was white, just like the thing of painting on top of this colorful postcard that already makes the painting look how it looks. Like it doesn't have to be the most obvious area where you have that original color, but I still always try to include it. Here you can see the break pattern that I did. I did most of that off camera because it was definitely a big struggle. I tried to add some highlighted bits and some shadows as well. But yeah, the color choices that I went with look a little bit muddy and dirty, but I guess that it's, meant to look kind of dirty. But in this case here, how it actually looks was kind of like too much for me maybe. But I don't know. I actually thought that this would become one of my favorites, or like an instant favorite, I guess. But when I was starting to make the areas around the door, I was like, oh, okay, I don't really like this that much, but I love what's behind the door. I would love to paint that only, but of course, since I had to include that color into the painting, it definitely did not turn out exactly how I would have wanted, but it's always a fun challenge trying to include that color in any way. Like if I would have painted this on a normal sketchbook paper, I would not make it like this. I would have the emphasis on the thing what's behind the door, and then the area surrounding it would be something that I like more, and something maybe more simple or different. But here I had to include it, so I had to work around it. But I think it worked out in the end pretty well. I'm happy with this painting. It's definitely not my favorite, but again, it was a challenge and I love a good challenge sometimes. By the way, I forgot to say this earlier in the video, but I will have these postcards linked in the description of this video, along with the 100 postcard set, because I know that some people might be also interested in more postcards. They are different in each set. So yeah, you can shop using my link so I can get a little commission, and I will also have my gouache and my brushes there in the video description. So definitely go check that out. But now it was finally time for day 3, and I have to say that against all odds, I absolutely love how this painting turned out. As you can see, I started sketching it again, like I said before, I added the gesso in, and for this painting it just worked because the background was so light. I mean, it's not super light, but you can still see the sketch pretty well. I also tried to make the sketch a little bit like darker because, like I said, when you add that gesso on later, that will make it fade out more, but you know, I still saw it enough when that was done that I could use it as a guide for my painting on top. But this has also been a little struggle for me before, because I remember, especially when I was making a Pantone on a darker background, I made a really detailed sketch. I think I was making like this alleyway that had a lot of different elements in it. I think I spent like over half an hour on just the sketch part, and then I added the gesso on top and it completely took everything away, and I basically started from zero again and I had to do the whole sketch again. So I'm definitely I try to avoid those kinds of mistakes, but I'm happy that with this painting you could still see the sketch, because that was definitely a crucial part of this painting process. If you haven't realized by now, I'm painting some sunflowers. Sunflowers are probably my all-time most painted Pantone subject, which is interesting because I've never painted sunflowers in my actual sketchbook before. I don't know, it's just an easy way to use color, because yellows and oranges, even though I like them as colors, they are always kind of hard for paintings in my opinion. I don't necessarily love painting yellow and orange things, so I guess sunflowers are the first things that come to my mind, but I think this worked out really well. I kind of don't like the idea that the name of this postcard is Iceland Poppy and I'm just painting sunflowers on top, but let's just erase that bit from our minds, okay? So yeah, I'm painting this very close-up picture of a sunflower. I definitely was again struggling with the colors very much. As you can see, I'm just kind of trying to layer colors on top and also include that base color kind of in between some of the petals here. And I was kind of always going and brightening the colors a little bit, because this has been an issue for me many times that I've painted these Pantones, because when I add color on top of the colorful background, the color that I just added on top will dry nothing like it looked a little while ago. So I was adding those first colors onto the petals, but they just kind of ended up drying really weird and this dull orange color, and then I just had to add almost straight off the tube yellow color onto the petals to make them pop more. I feel like this is just all about color theory, and I personally haven't learned much about color theory. I know I should do that because I know it's such a crucial part of being good at doing art, but you know, the colors look very different from my palette to the base color on top of the postcard, so that always makes it super hard for me to predict what the color will look like, and that also leads into me just having to paint a lot of layers and try to fix those mistakes. I also just added some red as a shadow color, but I did not really like that in the end. At this point I was also kind of getting frustrated, and I was really scared that this would not turn out good, especially because those first two paintings were not exactly ones that I loved. So I was kind of sad that this was going to turn out into something like that as well. I always have harder time when I'm starting my Pantone challenges. So many times I've done 2 times the 30-day challenge, and then I did one where I painted the rest I had left at that point. So I've always had the same thing when I start my new Pantone challenge, that maybe the first even 10, but at least first 5 are kind of a little meh, you know, I don't really like them that much, and then I start making something better and something that I enjoy more. So I don't know, it was just a little bit frustrating because I knew that it's a big possibility that I will create something that I don't necessarily love, but it's of course always a little bit frustrating to feel that way during a painting process, because of course you would like to be the most confident person when you're painting. I'm not ever very confident, but yeah, with this one I was definitely starting to not believe in myself at all, which is something that oftentimes happens with my paintings. But I'm very happy that my initial thoughts were not true at all, and I definitely got away away from that ugly face, but it only took a long time. It took a lot of layering and a lot of work and a lot of color on top of colors, but finally I got there in the end, and that's, you know, all that matters, I guess. So I have so far only painted these 3 paintings I'm showing you in this video. I have painted them at this point when I'm recording this voiceover like a week ago, and I am honestly not sure if I will be painting more of these. I mean, I would love to, because I hate abandoning a challenge or something that I put my mind into, but I don't know. I feel like maybe as an artist I've grown past these Pantone challenges by now, and they are a fun practice and a fun challenge, but I just kind of love the freedom of creating onto white pages and painting whatever I feel like, because I just don't like the frustration with finding out painting subjects. Like if someone did that for me, I would happily just paint, but of course that has a lot to do with what I'm feeling, and no one else can do that for me. But like, if that was the possibility, I would absolutely go for that. But yeah, you know, figuring out painting subjects, especially for colors that I don't normally ever use in my paintings, is very hard. It's of course very like a big learning moment, and I love that, but in the moment it's just kind of like I would just love to just whip up my sketchbook and just start painting in it. I still like going outside of my comfort zone, and this is always that. But yeah, I'm just not sure if I will continue this. I'm also very busy at the moment, so I don't know like if I will continue this, when I will continue it, but I mean, let's see. I guess at least I will share these online, and I'm happy that I tackled this challenge and painted something that definitely is not my usual comfort zone at all. But yeah, I was just finishing up this painting. I was making the middle section of the flower, and then I also painted some little raindrops on top of the petals. They were in the reference photo, and I also thought that maybe they would distract, you know, the viewer a little bit from the petals that were kind of a little bit overworked. Even though I like them, I still thought that maybe adding those raindrops on top would make it a little bit clearer and, you know, fun to look at, I guess. And they were a lot of fun, and I definitely think that they achieved just that. But yeah, that was my Pantone challenge video. I really liked going back into painting after a break. I am happy that I filmed this video, even though it wasn't necessarily the fun, freeing, exciting video to do, because like I said, it had a lot of like moments where I did not know what I wanted to paint. But yeah, I had fun, and I hope you also enjoyed watching me paint these. And if you did, don't forget to subscribe to my channel and leave a like and leave a sunflower emoji down in the comments so I know you watched until the end. Thank you so much for watching, and I hope to see you in my next video. Bye bye!